too late. I fell in love with writing when I was 9, fell in love with running when I was 11. It might seem like I'm the lucky one who just found his bliss very early, but I still try to maintain the same mindset. I'm getting further and further on in life. My health isn't what it used to be. And I always still want to believe that my best is still in front of me. In order to believe that at my age, I have to believe it's never too late. It's tragic when you tell yourself it's too late, because almost always it's not.
I'd like to welcome Matt Fitzgerald to a video podcast. This will be the first time we're doing a video call. This is our third time meeting Matt. I don't think we ever met face to face. I heard recently, I don't know when you came to Birmingham. You came to Birmingham. I'm local here. So next time when you come to Birmingham, look me up and we can go run and do things here. Welcome to this podcast. How's things been?
It's great to be back. First of all, thank you for the invitation. And things are good. I'm very, very busy. Since the last time we spoke, I moved from California, where I lived with my wife, Nataki, for a very long time. Bought a property here in Flagstaff, Arizona. That's where I'm speaking from, and opened up a business called Dream Run Camp. And it's got me very busy, but in a good way.
I remember your last book. You went to Flagstaff for a while and you worked there, lived there, ran with people. I remember reading about it. So now you just decided to move to Flagstaff.
Yeah, I just had an incredible experience in 2017. At that time, I was 46 years old and I had never been a professional runner myself, but I was able to convince the coach of the Hoka Northern Arizona Elite professional running team to allow me to basically embed myself with the team as a kind of honorary member for 13 weeks. And so I just got to live the life of a professional runner, just as a middle-aged amateur runner, and wrote a book about the experience. At the end of those 13 weeks, I was able to race the Chicago Marathon in the men's elite division and just be a pro for a day, and wrote a book called Running the Dream about the experience. And then after that, I thought that I really wanted to make a version of the experience I had available to anyone who wanted it. And so that was the genesis of Dream Run Camp. So it's sort of like a pro style year-round training retreat where runners of all abilities and ages can come individually on their own schedule and stay for up to 12 weeks. And just like I did, live the life of a pro runner, regardless of their ability.
Definitely. So you have like a property where people can stay and like a hostel kind of environment. Let's talk about that. That's a very interesting concept.
Yes. What do you want to
know? So if I want to come, let's suppose, and join your program, how does that whole thing work? So let's talk about that a little.
We have a website, dreamruncamp.com, that's got more information about it. But the format, I call it rolling attendance. For anyone who's listening who's been to an adult running camp, they're all pretty similar. I mean, there's lots of them out there, and most of them, it's like between 1 and 3 dozen runners. Everyone arrives at the same time, stays for 3 or 4 days, and leaves at the same time. This, right, each runner just comes individually on their own schedule. We actually have 2 houses now, and so we have room for 7 runners at a time. Just you hang out for the minimum stay is 1 week, and as I said before, you can stay for up to 12 weeks, and you get face-to-face coaching from me. So I facilitate a run every morning, and then I have a network of special service providers, physical therapist, strength coach, dietitian, sports psychologist, massage therapist. And so you get to, just like the pros, it's not just one head coach, but you have a whole team around you supporting your running. And, the main property here has, a commercial quality gym. It has what I call a mind body recovery lounge that has a hyperbaric chamber in it. We've got a dry sauna, a spa pool, a running library. It's just like the whole thing is outfitted just to be like kind of a runner's paradise.
So what kind of runners coming through your program right now? Is it an elite athlete or just an everyday athlete like me?
It's a very diverse population that comes here, which is exactly what I was looking for. I really wanted all ages, and women, people who are new to running, people who are experienced. Yes, I've had some very fast runners here. I've had elite runners here, but it's mostly middle to back of the pack runners. People come for all different reasons. Some people just they lost the spark, maybe during the pandemic or after, or they got injured and they wanted to come here just to have fall in love with running again. Others just are chasing like a certain, like maybe qualifying for the Boston Marathon or some type of performance goal. Others are more focused on learning. I've had coaches who came here who just wanted to, learn a lot from me about how to be a better coach. So it's just, and we have a lot of international athletes increasingly coming here, athletes from all over the US, North America. And so, yeah, the most common question I get when people reach out is like, am I too slow to come to Dream Run Camp? And like, those are exactly the runners I'm trying to reach. The ones who like, don't feel like they deserve something like this. That's what I'm here for. Is like, if you love running and you want to improve, you absolutely deserve this.
So definitely, it sounds like for me, I used to be fast. Speed is relative, correct? I always tell people like, my fastest may not be slow for somebody else, but the fastest I went is 3:20. Not long ago too. And then, I think I saw you in Boston or something. I think I saw you somewhere in Boston. Maybe that's the last time I ran Boston, 2017. Maybe that's the year. But anyway, I lost my speed. So over the pandemic, and I guess sounds like something I may need to look into, coming in a couple of years if I'm chasing the Boston again, which I'm doing it right now.
Okay. Yeah, we're here for you.
Definitely, we need to look it up a little bit more. You're an author. You've been writing books for a while. So, what are the new books you have done? I saw the 2023 on pacing. I'm a pacer, so it was really interesting. I just got in. I got like I need to listen to you a little bit, and before I talk to you today, I just got like an audio version today. But I did order your latest book. Let's talk about those two. On pacing is really, I think, on pacing, correct? That's the book.
On pace, but it was actually just re-released with a kind of an expanded edition with a new title. So the one that's called "How to Run the Perfect Race" is like basically the second edition of On Pace. So more or less the same book, same topic. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah. So if I listen to the first one, read the second one, I'm gonna get something out of it. Definitely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about pacing a little bit, because I'm, as a pacer, that's what I do. Help people. It's a little different level, but whatever you talk about. But I definitely try to figure out what pace this should be. When I go to big races, they will come and say, hey, I did. So I usually calculate them. I ask them, what did their 20-mile look like? What are their, so I kind of started calculating, okay, if you're done 2 hours, in 3 hours, 20-mile, and then we kind of calculate what's the pace, and then I add it here and there. So for people to figure out their pace, what is the best technique do you think, they should be using while they're training?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, really every single run you do is an opportunity to just get a read on where you are. And if you look at the runners out there who are true masters of the skill of pacing, the ones, and what do I really mean by that? I mean, if you finish a race and you look back and say, there's nothing I could have done differently that would have gotten me to the finish line any faster, then you paced the race perfectly. And that's incredibly rare. We know it, scientifically, we know that most runners leave time on the table through imperfect pacing. But the runners out there who are really good at just nailing it, they're learning. They're just always paying attention. They train very mindfully. So I think there are a lot of runners out there who mistakenly believe that it's only maybe like your race pace interval workouts, which you do no more than a handful of an entire training cycle. Like those are the ones where you learn your pace. That's not true. Like that's every run, every run. Like even like, like a recovery run you do the day after the hardest interval session of your life when you're carrying a lot of fatigue. It's supposed to be low intensity. It's not that long. Even that run, if you're paying attention, tells you a little bit something, a little something about where you are. So I think that's the best approach, is to understand that like you can, if you're just always paying attention, now you have to contextualize, because like if you run slow in a recovery run the day after the hardest interval session of your life, well, you shouldn't think, oh my God, I'm a terrible runner now because I ran slow and I felt bad. It's like, well, of course you did. You're really tired from yesterday. So you need to like contextualize and interpret. But you could do that just to keep, drilling down on that one example. You could do that recovery run in a fatigue state and be able to compare it to other runs like it you've done in the past and say, wow, considering I just did the hardest interval workout of my life yesterday, like I actually feel surprisingly good. Or like, I'm actually, running faster at my recovery pace than I did when I set my PR a year ago. So like, if you know how to like contextualize and interpret, what you're experiencing, you can learn from every single run. That being said, of course, some runs are more race specific in their nature. I mean, the closer you get to touch, I mean, what do you do in a race? You try to find your limit, right? In training, you don't, but there are some workouts where you come pretty close to your limits. And those are special opportunities to learn more about where your current limits are so that you can, make prognostications about, what's an appropriate goal time or pace for an upcoming race.
You're talking about not even like what I look at people's 20-mile or 13-mile, or you're talking about even the short distance. You can kind of
Yep.
build that up. And for me is sometime whenever I am trying to race, and I'm not pacing myself, which doesn't work out well for me at
Mhm.
at the end. And what I'm trying to do is like, after as I'm listening to your book, I'm thinking maybe I need to change my plan as I'm trying to rebuild myself, because I slow down, per mile. I have probably slow down at least 2 or 3 minutes.
Mhm.
So that's a lot to, if you look at marathon distance, it's a lot. So
Yes.
I need to condense that a little bit more.
Mhm. Yeah.
So in that scenario, like if I'm going to track workout, and you're not even thinking about that, you're just saying every running you go, when you put your shoes out, just see what do you look like. Is that what it is? Even the recovery run.
Yeah, it really is about, I mean, some workouts can, just have special value as indicators. For example, maybe you do, one of your bread and butter workouts is, critical velocity intervals. So those would be intervals that like they're right at the line between moderate and high intensity. So the kind of thing you could sustain for 30 minutes in a race, so somewhere between 5K and 10K for a lot of runners. Like no matter what you're training for, you should do, workouts that target that intensity. And if you do like just a standard, it could be, it could be, 6 times half a mile at critical velocity.
Mhm.
And if you do that, 2 or 3 times in every training cycle, you have this broad basis for comparison, right? So even though that intensity is, significantly higher than marathon intensity for a lot of people, it's a good workout to do in marathon training. And if you do that workout and then you race a marathon, now you can sort of like compare the two. Oh, when I perform this at this level in this workout, this is the marathon, the results. Even though the marathon doesn't look all that much like that workout, it does start to gain some predictive power. And so in your next training cycle, if you do that same critical velocities run and your pace is, 3 seconds per mile faster, what that tells you is that you're fitter than you were before. Not hugely, but you are, measurably fitter. So that might tell you you're ready for, a 5 minute, to go for a 5 minute PR in the marathon, that type of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I look at it, for me, it's like how far I am away from Boston. I'm right now at this moment, I'm very far. I looked at the Chicago recently. Somebody posted, and I looked at the Chicago Marathon. They changed it to, they updated they have a qualifying time as well. I didn't know that about this, so they're faster than Boston, than all of our running community right now in Ez, because I guess this is Boston's going to change their time too. So we don't know. So
Uh-huh.
it is what it is, correct? And in that sense,
Yep.
but definitely putting the training out, and one of the things that as we talk about in this, training and pacing and all, Even today, people are, I was talking to people like, I'm becoming a grandmaster runner. I think that's right. I turned 55, and I'm slower than. And I said, gentleman said, "Hey, Suman, because you're getting old." I told him, as long as I don't put the training level that used to put. And I will not I will not say that because it's just because of age. Age may be a factor. Yes, my body hurts, but maybe I'm not doing things correctly. That's when I had to bring it back. So you said that, what age are you in a 50 range now? Are you becoming a grandmaster runner now?
I'm 53. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so does that for you, has that changed being in that age group from, we talk about when you are in 45? My best time came from, usually I tell people my best time came from, I started when I was 38, but my best time of running came between 45 to 50, and that's where I qualified twice for Boston, running the fastest. I used to win trail races, and so it's kind of decline. I can see the decline, but again, I'm not putting the level of training I used to have.
For me, I was running I started running when I was 11 years old. I was still running very well at 48, 49. Then I got COVID, and then I ended up with long COVID, and I haven't been able to run since then. So I haven't been able to run in close to 4 years now. So
Wow.
that's not an aging thing. I just have a chronic illness now.
Because of the COVID. I remember when we had a podcast
Yep.
last time we talked about this. I
Mhm.
was kind of thrown. I was telling somebody I was kind of thrown off guard because I didn't realize, and
Yeah.
then you, even your last book, that book I'm listening right now, you talk about that. So definitely, it's
Mhm.
a long journey for you, looks like. So switch a little bit. The main topic I wanted to talk about on this one today. We talk about running. You're expert in running, pacing, and you have built so many expertise. What I'm trying to tell people, and people ask me all the time, saying, "Hey, how do you make a living from running?" So you write books, you coach. So I wanted to kind of talk. Main topic is like, how do you build your passion, and how do you write about it, and living? And that's what you do now. You add the coaching now, but for a long time you were just author. So let's kind of dig a little bit and see how far we go on this topic.
Okay, that sounds good.
So tell me about the writing. How does the writing, or passion for something, like for you as a writing, for me, I make a videos of how do I make my passion of running combined with whatever I like to, like I do the videos, I do a lot of interviews, things like that. How can a person involve their passion to make a living out of it?
Yeah, I can tell you what worked for me. I don't know how useful it is for other people, but for me, I just really focused on what I enjoyed and what I was passionate about, and I guess my skills and strengths. So I grew up running. I grew up wanting to be a writer. I think I was 9 years old when I decided I was going to be a writer when I grew up. I had the advantage of having a father who wrote professionally, so I knew that was possible. I didn't necessarily expect to write about running. I just happened to get a job after I graduated from college with an endurance sports magazine, and that was that opportunity led to others. But of my career path, I just sort of made my own path. I went from journalism to authorship to coaching, really to entrepreneurship. I started a company called 80/20 Endurance that just has like online training resources for endurance athletes and coaches, and that has grown into a healthy business. And now Dream Run Camp. And with all of it, I didn't really think about like playing it safe. I didn't really ask myself, how do I make a living doing this? I just did it because I wanted to and I enjoyed it. And I gave myself permission to kind of make it up as I went along. And that served me well because my motivation level always stayed very high because I was doing, I was just making choices based strictly on what I did well and what I enjoyed doing. And And so, yeah, maybe there's not really a formula that other people can replicate there. But that is what I encourage everyone to do, is to not worry too much about like, fitting into some kind of slot that is predetermined. But to just think about doing it your way, just giving yourself license to do it your way, and trust that the money will take care of itself.
Definitely. So one of the things you talk about in your book, over the years, that you never came, I mean, you just mentioned that too. You never came, you grew up as a runner. Running was not your thing, but now you're making a living. You that's your thing now.
Yep.
That's something I truly believe in. Like I said, over the years you grew up doing things. You keep working and keep working. Things changes. So how does that transformation? I mean, for you as being very, very young, you started very young you knew you want to be author, but beyond that, you didn't know what you were going to write, correct? So how did that work?
Yeah, there was definitely some chance involved, or you could call it fate. Yeah, I did start writing professionally when I was still in high school. So I started writing articles for the sports section of a local newspaper, like when I was
Mm.
16, 17 years old. It didn't pay a lot, but I still, I got my name in the local newspaper, made a little bit of money doing it. Got experience doing it, was able to put that on my resume. When I was in college, I wrote for the college I went to, Haverford College. I wrote for the alumni magazine, and then after I graduated, I took over as the editor of that magazine. So, it wasn't the most exciting, subject matter, but again, it was like professional experience. I was paying my bills through writing, and I was committed to that path. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I just moved to San Francisco for no particular reason. I was 24 years old. I'd never set foot in that city before. I just thought it was like maybe a good place to start a career as a writer. And when I was there, I was open to anything. I applied to a lot of different writing and editing jobs on all different subject areas. And I wasn't even running at that time. I'd actually quit for a while. But the job I happened to get was with a startup endurance sports magazine called Multisport. It was created by a gentleman named Bill Katowski, who had originally started the world's first triathlon magazine back in 1983. And he was a great mentor to me. Like, it was a small staff. I got to write about half of every issue of that magazine. And Bill just encouraged me to just, be myself, use my own voice. And that was an incredible experience. I had so much fun doing it. It was way more interesting than writing about, for the alumni magazine of my college. And so that was when I decided, like, wow, I could see myself doing this for a long time, especially because, like, being back in that environment, I got back into running, and then got into triathlons, and just reawakened that passion. And yeah, so there it just, the rest of it was really just, I am very ambitious. I love to, I don't know, set big goals and stretch myself. I always want to feel like that I'm on the ascent, that, like, my best race is still in front of me, and my best writing is still in front of me. And so that helped as well, just like always being hungry, always working very hard, always meeting deadlines. And then, yeah, I just stuck at it. And here I am.
Yeah, here you are. How many books have you written so far?
Well,
What?
it, I always hedge a little bit, because I mean, some of the books I've written, I co-authored, so I didn't write every word of them. I've done a couple, like, training log books. I mean, technically they're books, but there's not a lot of words in them. And then there's an example like How to Run the Perfect Race, which is actually the same book as On Pace. Do I count that a different book? Like, but if you just throw it all in there, it's maybe like 36 books, I think.
Got you. That's a lot of book.
It's a
I
lot
mean,
of books.
people have a hard time to just write one book. But I hear
Yeah.
horrible story, and like every day I'm like, should I write a book? And I was like, I'm not an author. So I just create videos and That's my outlet, creative outlet. I guess that's what we call it, to put myself out and on. And I really like some of the things you kind of when talked about. Having your talent, your main talent is writing. You just kind of evolved to, you could be. You could have been found on a different in a parallel universe. You could have been a writer for a computer, San Francisco, maybe some startup writing about startup computer. But this is the
Yeah.
passion that you chose, and kind
Mhm.
of went. And luck also has its own way to kind of where you take you, because you never know where everything will go, but you kind of stayed. But one of the things you said, you stayed in that domain, the
Mhm.
sports domain, correct? Is that something people looking at would you go outside this domain and write about something else, or should people stay in their domain? Not the lane. Lane is very narrow. I'm talking about
Yeah.
domain can be big, correct? So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are any rules there. I liken it to, like if you're an actor in Hollywood and you're trying to, make it big, and you get like your first big role in a film, you play like a villain with a German accent, and the movie does well and your performance is well reviewed. Well, then it's possible you'll be typecast, and like all the other offers you get, like every other director wants you to be that villain with a German accent, and you're like, I can do other things, like I just happened that happened to be the first role I did that people saw. So that, the same thing can happen in other professions, like where your first big opportunity or big break kind of, it almost like, yeah, it's an opportunity, but it also for precludes a lot of other. It has a way of channeling you, and for me, yeah, I mean, I do have other interests. There are other things that I might like to write about, but then again, I've been able to incorporate a lot of my other interests into, because running is life. So like I'm a big science geek, and so I'm able to incorporate a lot of science, and not just exercise science. Like I'm keen on evolutionary biology and complex adaptive systems theory. And if you read enough of my stuff, you'll see that like I weave some of my interest in those other subject matters. So you can sort of like, that's the other thing, like you can make it. This is something I wish I had realized earlier, because early on when I was writing about sports, I did enjoy it, but I sort of felt like, I guess it was like the literary snob in me thought, well, it's just sports, it's not serious literature. But over time, I realized, wait a minute, there's no law that says I can't write a great book about sports. And until up to that point, I felt like I was just holding back a little bit, just kind of saving my best stuff for some other subject. And then when I stopped doing that, I started just really finding my voice as a sports writer. I mean, the first book I really did that with was Iron War, which is, it's narrative nonfiction. So it tells like a true story about a great rivalry in the early days of the sport of triathlon. And for that book, I didn't hold anything back. I wanted it just to be just a page turning novelistic read for something my mom could pick up and devour, you know what I mean, who has no interest in triathlon. So yeah, once I had that kind of epiphany that I could do whatever I wanted within this domain. And for me, that has kept it from becoming stale to me, even though I'm surrounded by the sport all the time. I just feel that like it's just a microcosm that contains all of life, and I can explore any aspect of life through writing about running.
definitely, that's one thing I try to talk to. When people say, "Hey, only thing you talk about is running," it's like you don't understand. That's just part of me, my blood, the vein runs through running, and that's why I talk about running. Even though I'm trying to, do a little, like in my video, trying to make a motivation video, and then trying to make a little bit of, but everything kind of funnels down to running, correct? And that's kind of what you're talking about, because that's our main domain. That's where we're expert in running because I spent 17 years of running. So definitely, I'm trying to make many type of videos, but like I said, running becomes that thing, and as a domain expert, that's it's easy to write as well. But I do like to explore a little bit. That's kind of where I'm trying to explore. You have business. You're an entrepreneur. You talked about your business is still running related, so everything is kind of revolves around that, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And even, Dream Run Camp here, running is in the name. It's, no one comes here unless they're really into running. But, I connect with the people who come here and they connect with each other on in a whole human level, so it's, yeah, running is just sort of like the common language, but, you can explore all kinds of different things through it.
That's exactly, yeah. That's kind of where I'm thinking, like that's our common denominator, running. But because as a runner, I'm still a father, a husband, worker, and so on. Why not? We can not build, other thing we can talk about other things. So definitely. So you talk about this is stagnating. You kind of in the same thing, you're talking over and talk. Is there any time when you are in this pursuit? Is there any time when you felt like I'm talking too much running now? Is this my passion is kind of taking over me, and then I'm talking. Is there a time you felt like earlier you talked or you did those, but now, but it's like nothing you want to explore? As I'm asking this because people like us, we work, we spend a lot of time doing things for running wise. Then said, is there a time to stop? Do we stop doing this and find something to do, like I say, talk about finance or something, things like that. So
Yeah, I guess I've always found, especially if we just bring it back to writing, you know, I I I just keep learning, and having new experiences and just exploring new territory that it really just it remains fresh to me. We were going to talk about it anyway, but like, I recently created this online course for 80/20 endurance called Endurance Mastery. And it's all about this idea that, as athletes, what is like the goal behind all of our goals? We seldom really think about that. Like, we all have goals, but what happens when you achieve a goal? You raise the bar, right? So apparently, like, the goal itself wasn't the point. Like, and so like if you keep going, searching for the goal behind the goal, like what you end up with is mastery. And mastery is just where you've become as good as it's possible for you to be. Like you've fulfilled all of your potential. Like that's really the journey we're on, but nobody ever talks about it that way. Like we talk about all the different methods to improve, but we never talk about where improvement is actually supposed to lead, and like who does it and how. And so it really is like a developmental process. And we're used to thinking of sports in developmental terms with youth, but that process continues. Like, I mean, like you said, you didn't even start running until you were well into adulthood, right? So you were at the beginning of a developmental process, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. Just because you were physically mature, you weren't going to just be the best runner you could be. You had to go through this process. So this course is all about like kind of laying out what that looks like. First of all, just inviting athletes, hey, are you interested in, is this enticing to you? This concept of becoming is like, forget about your natural ability. Like that's baked in at birth. But like, do you like the idea of finding your own personal limit? And if you do, would you like to know how? And that's what this course is all about. And I wasn't really thinking in these terms and like exploring this kind of corner of endurance sports until pretty recently. So for me, it was just exciting and new and fresh and challenging. And then as soon as I finish that, I'm on to the next thing. So, there could come a point when I'm just sick of it all. But I kind of doubt it. I just keep finding myself in a new place with new things to say.
definitely. that's one of the things that I'm trying to get, as my children's as growing up, the leaving home, you know. So one of the thing is it's still funnels down to running, but using my traveling, my passion for traveling, also an outlet. I will travel for running. I do that a lot nowadays, much more than when we talked about it. And I go to Europe a few times a year, and then go to multiple hour majors. And when I'm traveling to that city, I live in Alabama. I don't have a opportunity to do things that I can go and when I'm in a big city, correct? So what I do is I try to use my traveling time to learn, grow, not only running, and I'm talking about something else as well. I'm taking people through a journey of traveling, and I'm trying to learn how to do this better. But I think it's just finding something else beyond, so that way people can see the other sides of me. I think that's what I'm trying to do. But back to the topic we're talking about, making a living out of passion that you have. It's you have done it. I've seen several people done it, but the journey itself is not that easy, not straight, correct? That's kind of where we agree on that one.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, for me, it was helpful that I wasn't, well, I guess I have, I was never terribly motivated by money. I was more motivated by, self-actualization, just seeing what I could do. And of course I wanted to have a roof over my head and have enough food to eat. But in my 20s, I was comfortable, I was just scraping by. At one point, when my wife and I started dating, I had I had college debt, I had credit card debt. I was living in a very expensive city and not making a lot of money. I had no savings. And it took some time, but like I was basically okay with it because I loved what I was doing, and I felt like it was going somewhere. And it was only, I think that was a good way to go, because then once I had some momentum, I wrote some books that were successful, and then publishers wanted more of my books, and I didn't have to like pound on every door as hard as I used to early in my career. And then I saw, like, I actually could make decent money doing this, and I don't mind doing it. I think, I mean, selling out is something that people tend to regret, when they have a passion that they compromise, for the sake of money, for whatever reason. But for me, like, it was like, I felt like I never had to make that compromise, because I had followed my passion, achieved success, and then I could see how much money I could make doing it. That seemed like the proper order for me, because like I was always being true to my passion, and I was patient, and yeah, and then just, I guess, eventually, once I had, a spouse to take care of, and businesses where I had to, be responsible to employees, then started to care about money a little more, but again, without compromising the passion that was underneath all of it.
Definitely. Yeah, that's such a great insight and advice. Passion, following the passion with, people. One of the thing I read about, like, people, when people dig into this, and I tell myself the same thing. It's like, you get to so far, and then you get so frustrated, and you stop. You see what I mean? I said, hey, you're doing good. Just stay in this thing. There's something, it will happen. It's just that a lot of time people just go in their passion. Okay, it'll be weekend project, passion, whatever have you. Then they spend many hours, and the result is not there, what they wanted, and then they said, okay, this not may not be. They move to the next shiny stuff. So
Yes. Yeah, I think there is sort of, I mean, let's face it, I mean, not everyone can make it work, that's just the fact. But there's, there's a lot to be said for just having trust in yourself and in trust in what you're doing. I think that's often the difference maker. Like, there's a lot of people who like start off, pursuing a passion, but then like I was an English major in college, and all of my fellow English majors wanted to be writers, and then a lot of us were for about a year or two until
Mm.
80% of them saw how hard it was and went to law school. Um, so so I think but if you I don't know if it's something you just have to, it's innate, or if it can be taught, but like if you just trust yourself, like you just really believe you have something to offer, and if you don't have to see the path to believe there is a path, so almost like a trust in fate, I guess. Then you hang in there, right? So yeah, it's harder than you thought, and it's taking longer than you thought, but you don't go to law school. You can't, or you stay on that path because you trust yourself and you trust it's going to work out one way or another. And for me, absolutely, like when I look back, from my current vantage at my career path, there was no plan there. Like, and it's like, it just seems quite arbitrary that I am where I am now. um but it all makes sense when I rewind it's like I guess there was a certain blindness to what was ahead, but there was that sort of like inwardly and outwardly directed trust that kept me in it, and eventually it actually did work out.
It worked out. So definitely one of the things I'm telling my daughter who graduated from college, she just got a job in a nonprofit, and she wasn't making a lot of money. And then, like what we just talked about, not chasing the money, but she loves to travel. She wants to do things. She is an off year right now, and I told her, you have no idea what's ahead. I believe what you got is like a gold mine for you. If I had that opportunity, that age when you just graduate from college and you know where it is, your parents taking care of things, I'm a first, we are first generation immigrants, so there was nobody, I have to do things for her. It's not needed. She has a home, she can do whatever. That's where we are. So just who knows where things can lead.
Right.
You have, yeah, like almost like what you're talking about, like you have little things to offer, and then the rest will come later. Maybe 80-20 rules. And even in this one, you have 20%, you graduate from college, you did great. Now 80% of things will come later. So kind of, yeah. So definitely one of the things for me personally is that's why I am here. We're talking to you is all these things lead to one, to next, to next. I never started as, it's for me is maybe a little different, but I know I have a basic whatever I have, and then being wherever I'm doing right now, running was like that, and I didn't know anything about running. Even I didn't know how far was a marathon when I started. Then over the years, I ran Boston. I run around the world. I've done all the majors, and because I just stayed on it, kept going, learning, growing, making the connections. So now I pace around the world. So that's kind of it's very interesting thing I have going right now. So
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're an even better example of that phenomenon than I am, because you came to it much later, and it was just like you kind of came at the sport from uh like a different angle, well on in life, and yet it still ended up becoming a very big part of your life, personally and professionally. And so that just goes to show you, it's like, it doesn't matter how you come to the sport, when you come to the sport, if it really sucks you in, like you can find a home in the sport.
definitely for running, it's definitely, and sometimes because of the COVID, how things were, we are away from things, but then you go back and it's still there. People still want to do things. People still want to come out, achieve their goals, meet people. Running becomes not only running; it becomes, for me, it's traveling, meeting friends, getting connected, have a social lives and so on. It's just running it just like I said, running is probably a little part of the thing, but beyond that, we do so much stuff. So we really talk about this passion, how to get the passion in making out of passion, making a living out of it. So for what are the challenges? We talked about many different things like in a burnout, quitting it. What are other challenges? There are other challenges you see people, if they want to make a living out of the passion. We're talking about here running, both of you and I, we're runner. People maybe triathlete or whatever have you. Maybe they're just digging a hole out there. It's just their passion to, have a gardening or, cooking shows or, have a YouTube channel. So is there other challenges do you see beyond whatever we just talked?
Well, I mean, now that I think about it, like it's nothing but challenges, really, honestly. I mean, especially the writing part. Writing is hard, like always. I was working on something earlier today and I felt like I was going backwards, like I've been doing this for decades, you know what I mean? Like I've been doing this for a very long time. And it's still hard. Like even just like, there's really no easy days with writing. Like, I mean, that's part of like, but that's just it, like I like it because it's very challenging. Like, it really, it's a workout for my brain. Sometimes I'd want to pull my hair out, when it's just not flowing. But I love that about it, that it is hard and it's a lot like running, right? Like, you don't get ready for the race of your life by nailing one workout. You just have to like just chip away and chip away, like and be patient and disciplined and do the work. And so writing, yeah, it's just like there are no easy days. And then there are all the other challenges, I was sued once in connection with a book I wrote. That was very challenging. There was a couple situations where I backed out of books. So I had gotten a contract and then things went sour with the publisher and I backed out, like very stressful. And then all kinds of like, for one book I remember they came up with a cover that I loved and then they changed it and I hated the new cover and I just, went to battle with them saying you got to switch back to. And now, that was stressful. So like, and these are like all, I mean, those problems are like successful writer problems, right? When you get, I mean, part of the reason I started my own publishing company, which I did, 80/20 Publishing, which is a sister company of 80/20 Endurance, is like, I was just fed up with publishers. I'm like, I just feel like I'm just going to have my own thing so I can do it the way I think it should be done. It's challenges all the way.
So it's like starting any startup business,
Yes.
I worked for a startup business for a very long time before I joined a bigger company where, startup, you're the man, other than, I used to say, other than cleaning the bathroom, which I left that for CEO of the company, I did everything. But when you go to a bigger company, it's a little different. So definitely, that's one thing I was going to ask you. How do you publish these days? So you self-published or you have your own publishing company?
Yes, I have a book coming out in August called The Other Talent, and that is with another publisher. So I do write things for my own company, but I didn't start the publishing company, just to publish my own stuff. I wanted it to be a real company with like, occasionally it would be the outlet for something I wrote, but for the most part, it would just be a forum to amplify other, deserving voices. We have a book coming out in the winter called The Norwegian Method, which is all about like, sort of like the Norwegian explosion in, endurance sports and what's behind it. It's written by a longtime friend of mine, a guy I used to work with at Triathlete Magazine named Brad Culp. It's his first book. And I actually reached out to him and because I had this idea and I thought he would be the perfect guy to write it. And he accepted. And so, that's what that publishing company is really for, is like being able to make books happen that deserve to happen and wouldn't happen otherwise. So yeah, I can go back and forth now. Like it's nice because I do have my own company. I'll never like, I had a couple books that I wrote and were never published because I couldn't get a deal for them. So that'll never happen again because I have my own thing. But I still do like I have a literary agent, Linda Connor, who is a dear friend. I've worked with her since 2007 or something. Like we've been through it all together. And so like I'll still work with other publishers just because she is my conduit to other publishers, and I don't want to like give up that relationship because we've been in sync for a long time.
So definitely. So how does the editing work? So since let's kind of, I'm going to go a little deeper than, I wanted to go about, since we're talking book publishing, and I hear horrible story about editing, editors and going back and forth. And, like you just say, you write 10 pages, they scratch you 8 out of 10, and you may have 2 pages, maybe 3 lines. So who knows? How does that work process for editing for a book?
Well, I had a tremendous advantage in that, I started writing seriously when I was in the 3rd grade. My first editor was my father, who is a terrific writer, and he has also taught writing. He has a master's degree in English. And so even if he wasn't my dad, like he would have been a great editor for, a young kid with a passion. And his style was he never held back, so he did believe I had a gift. He would also just redline, like he wouldn't hold anything back. Like if it was wrong or it could be better, like it was all on there. So I got used to that from a very early age. And to make it as a writer, I don't know, unless you're Shakespeare, like every writer, you need editors. It actually is sort of like, we think of it as solitary, but you're never going to publish your best stuff without help. And so it can be like a painful experience, like, because it's like, you write something and it's kind of like your baby, or you really identify it. So when you hand it off and someone sends it back and says, this could be a lot better, it feels personal. It feels like, oh my gosh, you just called my baby ugly. That's kind of what it feels like. But I mean, but then like you have to have some humility as a writer. No matter how experienced you are or how much of a knack you think you have, like you need to care about the work more than you care about your ego. Because if you do, then you will be open to that type of criticism. And, there are incompetent editors, and that's super annoying. You definitely want the editor to be as good at editing as you are at writing. Like, and if they're not, then it's tough. But there are a lot of very good editors out there. And when you work with, I mean, I've worked with so many over the years, so I really have a basis for comparison. Like the editing team at Ben Bella Books, which is the publisher, I've never worked with them before, and they're publishing The Other Talent, and their editors are exceptional. So they have different levels. So like usually you'll have like a main editor who is, they're sort of like the project manager. So like they're in charge of like more of the high level stuff. So if you submit a manuscript and it just has structural issues, or, just things need to be kind of rearranged, or you need to do over on something, or something's missing, it needs to be added, or something is too much and it needs to go on a diet, whatever it is, like that editor, you'll go back and forth with them. And then like when you get through that process, then you would go into copy editing. And the copy editing is much more, you're zooming way in, and you're not worried about the big flaws. You're worried about the little flaws. And again, Ben Bella had an absolutely fantastic copy editor. He was super fussy. He told me like, Matt, like this is one of the cleanest manuscripts I've ever, had the pleasure to work on. But then he fussed over every little detail. So, I mean, I'm glad he told me he thought I did a good job overall, because like, because he was fussy, but like, again, like, when I read the way it looks now, versus like what I submitted, it's way better now. And yeah, so yeah, it's always a little bit like, when I submit a manuscript and I'm waiting for that first feedback from the publisher, like I'm kind of on pins and needles. Like, even after all this time, like all these books, like I'm just like, I hope they think it's good. I hope they think it's good. And when they send it back and I see like they're like, you should change this and you need to change that, it's always like this sinking feeling, because it's sort of like, I put all this work. You just think about how hard you work, because like you want it to be perfect when you hand it off. It's like, no work for you to do because I took care of it all. And so whatever flaws it has, you don't see them, because you've taken the time to make it as good as you can make it. So it's just rough. Like you're waiting for someone to see problems with what you wrote that you're blind to. And if it's a good editor, they're right. So like immediately there's like this ego response when you get the feedback. And it's like, you hate me. Well, I hate you too. But then, you count to 10 and you give it a chance. And, usually more often than not, you realize the editor's right. They just happen to find, flaws or areas that could be improved that you just didn't see. Yeah, but again, if you put the integrity of the work ahead of your ego, you end up with a better final product that people appreciate more. And then, the irony is like all the praise comes back to the author. Nobody reads a book and praises the editors, but they should because they usually have, if it's a really good book, then the editors like for sure deserve some of the credit.
Definitely. So it's tying back to what we talked about, working with your passion. Here you are, you put your heart out, wrote about things, and just it doesn't come out. And people, you got to go back and forth. And would you keep digging, or would you go to, like you said, go back to law school? Let's forget about writing. So,
Right.
so definitely. So that's really tied. So we spend almost an hour, maybe more than an hour now. I know I'm taking so much of your time. You just said that your food arrived, Indian food arrived. So I heard you have some good Indian restaurant over there. One of the things I want to mention is part about COVID. I learned during the COVID pandemic how to make a chicken tikka masala. So that's one of my specialty at family. They love it. So definitely, I don't want to hold you for your dinner. But is it dinner time there already? It shouldn't be dinner time, correct?
No, it's not. No, I think this is just a spontaneous. My wife orders from this place, Delhi Palace, all the time. Yeah, they're just down the street. They make a mean chicken tikka masala. When you come to Dream Run Camp, you can tell me. You can give me your own view on it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we do. I try now, I try chicken tikka masala everywhere I go. That's the only Indian food I order. So,
So good.
so yeah, and being from Nepal, it's a little different, but definitely it's a good food. And one of the thing I say, maybe one of those things you want to do is write about the Himalayas runners. I think we talked about that a little bit. I think some of your book you talk about the people in Everest should be running faster. I think we do have a lot of good trail runner now. A lot of future runners. I still need to keep up with internationally to my folks when I go. I know that there are folks that they're doing a really great job distance running and so on. Matt, thanks for coming back to my podcast. So it'll be video. I'll put it in YouTube. It'll be audio. It'll be distributed everywhere. Hopefully, the listener got a lot of good listening advice. Especially, really, I was trying to dig in the passion, and then how do you make a living out of your passion. Kind of that's where I wanted to go. We touched so much. So definitely looking forward to come one of these years to come to join your run camp, adult camps. So be running. That'll be really, I always had a dream to come to Flagstaff. So hopefully one day I'll get back to my PR level, or go back to be a little faster runner than where I am. Before we close our this interview, I always ask my guests to give a words of advice, so that people who wants to make a living out of their passion, whatever that would be, from your experience, can you give that, give words of advice?
I guess what comes to mind this time is the trite expression, "It's never too late." So many people, just getting back to your journey, I love those stories because folks like you are living proof. I mean, 38 is not that old, to discover running, but it was sometime after that you wanted to become like, a content creator and like a sharer in the sport. There are people who were, even though you weren't that old, you were old enough that like if it had been someone else, they might have said, I missed my chance. Like they might just fall in love with running and get really into it. But like, they'll just tell themselves it's too late to make it any more than that. To get into coaching or content creation, podcasting, pacing, whatever it is, like that you did. And for me, I sort of like, even though I say, okay, fell in love with writing when I was 9, fell in love with running when I was 11, it might seem like I'm the lucky one who just just found his bliss like very early, but I still try to maintain the same mindset. It was like, I'm getting further and further on in life. My health isn't what it used to be. And I always still want to believe that my best is still in front of me. And in order to believe that at my age, I have to believe it's never too late. It's funny, I was talking to my dad on Independence Day, which was 3 days ago as we speak. And he was saying that, like, he's about to turn 81. And he was saying, he still writes every day and he feels like he's never been better at it. And so like, that's what I want for myself. And that's what I want for everyone listening, is like, just like, don't, it's tragic when you tell yourself it's too late, because almost always it's not.
Great. That's a great parting thoughts. Great finishing this long podcast we have. Again, this is our third time. Hopefully I can see you for the first time. Fourth time, we may want to do face to face, and it'll really, while I'm running with you. So that's my goal. So give me a year or so. Let my push my child to college, and then I'm a free man after that. So.
Right on. Yeah, I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for your time, and we'll keep in touch, and we will we'll talk more. And I have to listen to both books, or listen to one and read the other one. So that's what I'll do, the on pacing, because on pacing, did I say that correctly?
On pace.
On pace. I don't know why I'm saying pacing, because I'm a pacer. I'm pacing. That's the only thing. But on pace. That's the book I'll definitely finish and listen. So thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Suman.
Let me